where we could have a normal worship service and then a fellowship meal and evening worship right after that, church each church. And that's what we've had here. Usually when we had church each church, you don't expect a lot of visitors because, how would they know that they're meeting that particular time or what time to meet or whatever. It's nice to see so many wonderful visitors to me anyway who are here, and I'd like to say more, but I don't think I'll be able to get to the sermon. I want to say more, I'm going to after the sermon. After we study the gospel, there are things I want to say to some people over here that I think need to be said. People definitely say that. What an honor it is to be here. How wonderful to see what nice surprises we've seen today so far. We're studying the 7 sayings of Jesus on the cross. I've entitled them Crosswords, not words of cross, and that's from Jesus on the cross, but words from the cross that intersect one with another and have great meaning for each one of us. Jesus is our perfect example in everything. Now, I told you that I've redone this is a series I've done many times, but I've redone this series, so I've got to stick to my notes because of some of the new things I want to say. And I redid the PowerPoint as a result, and I didn't review it very well. I'm not perfect like Jesus. There was a scriptural mistake in each one of the first 2. Hope I got this one right, but if not, that's why I need Jesus. I thought I need to follow these perfect examples of Jesus. It's been said that those who do not feel pain seldom think that it's ever felt. That is so true. And those of us who have felt pain know exactly what that meaning truly is. Let me give you a personal example. A long decades ago, I was in pain on the bathroom floor with a kidney stone. I mean, it was the worst attack I had ever had. And Julie keeps a nice, clean house, but I don't care whose house it is. I don't want to be writing on anybody's bathroom floor. But I was, and I didn't care about the condition of the floor at that point in time because of the intense pain that I was in. At that very moment, somebody was at the front door knocking. It just happened to be a nurse who probably could have helped me, and someone we knew. But at that moment, I didn't care who was at the front. I didn't care if I was winning the $1 million sweepstakes. It didn't matter because of the pain that I was in. Julie was there with me, and there was nothing she could do. But if she had any personal issues at the time that needed to be dealt with, I didn't care because I was in pain. And that's all I could focus on because those who do not feel pain seldom think that it is ever felt. But those who feel pain, that's all they can concentrate upon. While upon the cross, we know Jesus experienced incredible pain, and yet he was able to think of others. From the cross, he gave words of the wantingness of forgiveness. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. From the cross, he saved an individual who truly was repentant in heart. Assuredly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. And even from the cross, he was able to think of someone who would need a new family. Woman, behold your son. Behold your mother. Let's read the text. We read of it in John. Before we get to that, real quick, John is the only gospel account that includes this. And we might wonder why. Well, this might have just fit John's purpose for recording what he did. We know from John chapter 20, verses 30 and 31, that these things were written that you may believe. So this is a part of what he wrote that we can convince us Jesus truly is the Christ. Also, John wrote his gospel much later than what we call the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. They would have wrote around the 30s sometime, him 30 or 35 years later. And a lot of what John writes is supplemental material. He doesn't even repeat what all has been said. He does in many instances, but he adds to the narrative. But more than likely, in my opinion anyway, why John recorded this is because it involved John. It was very, very personal to him indeed. And I think that's something we can do with this text. We can make it very personal to each one of us today. And indeed, that's what we will. Now let's read the text. We're in John chapter 19, and we are going to read verses 25 through 27. Now there stood by the cross of Jesus his mother, and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus therefore saw his mother, and the disciple whom he loved standing by, he said to his mother, Woman, behold, your son. Then he said to the disciple, Behold, your mother. And from that hour, that disciple took her to his own home. I think there are three very interesting things for us to look at and to contemplate and to think upon today. First of all, let's think of the agony. Oh, not the agony of Jesus upon the cross. We'll talk a lot about that tomorrow. We can talk a little bit about it this morning. But I want us to think about the agony of Mary standing there. Jesus, when he looked down from the cross, that one moment at a time, he saw her standing by, powerless, helpless. There she was. And she was on his mind as well. If you think about it, life had not been easy for Mary. She had to endure the scrutiny and torment of what some thought was an illegitimate birth. She had to make a grueling trip to Bethlehem while near birth. Remember, give birth in a stable. The anguish she must have suffered knowing that Herod had planned to destroy her child and that many innocents would die as a result. The hardship she must have faced and forced to flee to Egypt and stay there for several years, avoiding Herod's wrath. The grief that must have filled her heart when she saw her firstborn was hated and persecuted by his own people. And now, the agony of watching her son be executed for a crime he didn't commit. Think of the agony. Must have been unbearable for such a loving mother. In Luke chapter 2, verses 34 and 35, we're introduced to the prophet Simeon. Jesus is brought to him, maybe Jesus to be dedicated per the Old Testament custom. And he gives his prophecy. And it's a most interesting one. Luke 2, 34 and 35. Behold, this child is destined for the fall and rising of many in Israel, and for a sign which will be spoken against. Yes, a sword will pierce through your own soul also, that the thoughts of many hearts may be revealed. This was spoken to Joseph and Mary. Your heart will be pierced. Not just his, yours will be as well. And now, she's experiencing that. John Gill, in his commentary, records this. The sorrows she met on account of her son. As he was a man of sorrows, so was she a woman of sorrows. From his cradle to his cross, and his sorrows, like so many darts or javelins, rebounded from him to her and pierced her soul through. Without a doubt, she must have been in great agony as she witnessed the death of her firstborn. She was there to see his beginning breath of life, and now she would be there to witness his last. Yes. Think of the agony. But I also want us to think about the compassion. Baseball player Brett Butler, who played many years ago, the baseball fans will recognize the name, suffered from cancer shortly after his baseball career. He tells a story about when he made the announcement to his family. He said his daughter came up to him the next day and said, Daddy, I prayed to God last night that he would give me your cancer. Brett asked, why in the world would you do that? She said, Daddy, because I think I can handle the pain better than watching you in pain. It's difficult to watch a loved one suffer so, isn't it? It was hard for Mary to watch her son die. How hard would it be for Jesus to witness his mother suffering so. And this is where we see the compassion come forth from Jesus. We've read time and time again about the great compassion of this great man. Time and time again, people would approach him and he would have compassion upon them. One time when thousands had followed him, and now they were without food and any way to get it. And he knew they needed teaching. He had compassion upon them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Time and time again, the word compassion is connected with Jesus. And it didn't end here. It continued. The last act of compassion on a hurting human before his death was to help his mother. She was going to need someone to take care of her in her older years, and he would not be around. Now, you, like I, when I researched this lesson, might wonder, where was Joseph? Where were Jesus' half-brothers? Shouldn't they be stepping up? Well, the answer is we don't know. The Scriptures do not reveal that to us. It is very likely Joseph was deceased. After Luke chapter 2, verse 51, when Jesus is 12 years old in the temple, remember that incident, that's the last time Joseph is mentioned in actuality or reality. He's mentioned in reference after that. Isn't this Jesus, the son of Joseph? But he's never mentioned as actually being there. Where was he? Well, more than likely he was passed on. Well, what about his brothers? They should take responsibility, shouldn't they? Well, again, speculating, we're told in John chapter 7 and verse 5 that even Jesus' brothers did not believe in him as the Messiah. We don't have any kind of reference to them believing until after his resurrection. Where were they? They weren't there. That's all we know. They weren't there, and she needed someone to take care of her. And Jesus knew just the person for the job. Jesus knew the old law. Jesus lived the old law. Well, as God, he helped write the old law. But he knew how important it was to honor your father and mother, the fifth commandment. A commandment repeated under the new covenant. A commandment with promise we must still consider. A commandment that covers all of the days of our lives. And Jesus could still do something to help care for his mother. And so he did. Even though going through difficult times, Jesus could honor his mother, and so he did. And as we talked about this morning, as the great example he is to us, we need to be concerned about the needs of others and how we can help. We'll talk more about that coming up. But let's give one more thought process, then we'll tie it all together concerning us. I want us to think of the action. Every time we read in the Scriptures of Jesus having compassion on someone, he always acted. He just didn't, oh, I'm so sorry, and then went on about his business. He did something about it. And he did so here as well. He could come down from the cross. He could give up on the crucifixion. But he knew that really wasn't an option if people are to be saved. If I am to be in heaven, he knew he had to stay there. What could he do? Well, there was one there he could turn to. Woman, behold your son. It almost sounds a little, woman, there's your son. It almost sounds a little crass, doesn't it? And that's the way we use it in the vernacular sometimes today, jokingly anyway. But he's actually using a great term of great respect. In Matthew 15 and verse 28, the Canaanite woman persisted in asking Jesus to heal her daughter. He said, "O woman, great is your faith." Every word there's a compliment, including the word woman, let us know. For woman, you are loosed from your infirmity, he said to the woman with the issue of blood, remember. It was a cultural thing, and the closest I can relate it to is the mission work that I've done in Ghana. In Ghana, if you want to honor a younger lady, even though you're not related, you call her sister. If you want to honor a middle-aged lady, you call her auntie. If you want to honor an older woman, you call her mama. Now, we would never do that here. But if you walk up to an older lady now and call her mama, she knows that's a term of great respect to her. And that's the word Jesus is using here. I almost get nervous when great Greek scholars sit in our presence like Gerald. And I'm going to butcher the Greek here. But when Jesus decided to use a great term of great respect, he used the word women. And it simply means lady. And we probably translate it, my dear lady, as the way he was saying that to her. He wasn't looking at her as a mother, but as a dear, dear lady in need of someone's help. And so, he helped. John was there. Now, John not mentioned by name, but John does refer to himself as the disciple whom Jesus loved in a most humble manner, I guess you could say. But John was there. And John could take care of his mother. And Jesus knew that John would. And so that is why, woman, my dear lady, this is now your son. I know he'll take care of you. I trust him. And you, John, the disciple whom I love, she's your mother now. You treat her as such. John the Apostle was to take care of her as if she was his own mother. Why John? Well, first of all, he was there at the cross. We don't read of very many men there. Remember that the disciples scattered like scared roaches when you turn the light on. There was a lot of women there, but not very many men. But John was, to his credit, he was there. He was obviously a very responsible individual. Someone who was very, very close to Jesus. We know that from several passages. And again, Jesus knew. He would take care of her. Now, as we conclude this and get into our application, you may wonder, since we talked about Joseph, what happened to Mary? Well, again, we don't know. We do have a reference to her in Acts chapter 1, verse 4, in connection with the disciples there on the day of Pentecost, as they gathered in Jerusalem. But that's the last reference to her. But here's what we do know. She was taken care of by John. Because the text says, he took her to his own home. She was taken care of for Jesus' wishes. Now, let's get into us with you. Oh, there's John. I forgot to do that. Here's my new PowerPoint of this. You got to see this. There's John, and there he moves closer. She's now his mother. There we go. Yeah, work hard on that graphic, okay? The key thing to remember here is Jesus showed compassion from the cross. Where there was agony and compassion, there was action. And that's an important point for us to know. Think of the agony. Think of the compassion. Think of the action. Why would I have Galatians 6:10 read as a scripture reading? As we have opportunity, let us do good to all. If someone wants to know, ability plus opportunity equals responsibility. Let's just take this formula. Agony, compassion, action. Someone's agony plus our compassion should equal our action. No matter how bad we might be suffering in life, we can do something to help, even if it just involves someone else. I like the illustration of a man who fell into a pit and couldn't get himself out. A Pharisaical person came along and said, only bad people fall into a pit. A modern thinker came along and said, your pit's only in your state of mind. A subjective person came along and said, I feel for you down there. An objective person came along and said, it's logical that someone would fall in a pit like that. A realist came along and said, yep, that's a pit you're in, all right. And the basic person came along and avoided the subject of the pit altogether